portrayed for us to understand what is happening within us. You get tricked. The mind distracts you. It takes you to the past, the future. You go off at a tangent. There was a lady in an office. When you asked her any question, she would talk completely irrelevant things. And just because she had a loud voice, the other person would shut up. This is what the mind does. The moment you try and call the bluff of the mind, it just it distracts you, takes you to other thoughts, and before you know it, you've forgotten what you got into it. The intellect is that which helps you keep focus. Then, when you use your intellect, you won't get, what happened to the Indian cricket team in Australia will not happen to you. You go to play cricket, you do everything except cricket. That never happens. You maintain the focus. Like in the Australian Open, the tennis, the guy who won it kept focus. The mind misleads you and you end up barking up the wrong tree. Throughout your life, you're caught in a vortex. You're just going round and round in circles. You never find your way out. It's the intellect that leads you to your destination. The mind essentially looks outward. Your senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin are all pointed outward. So is the mind pointed outward. The intellect is the only entity in you that has the capacity to look within. But that also gets disabled, then you've had it. The mind destroys. It has a destructive ability. It's like fungus, like bacteria. Wherever it finds a conducive environment, it starts multiplying, like virus. The intellect is that which is constructive. It builds, thought by thought, action by action. It builds this edifice of your personality. The mind weakens you. Dasharatha, the king of Ayodhya, an extremely powerful person, became completely weak and disabled because of his attachment to Rama. This is what happens to people. What happened to Ramalinga Raju, they say, is because of attachment to the sun. That mighty industrialist ended up, you don't want to know it. Weakens you. It's the intellect that helps strengthen you. The mind falls for instant pleasure. That's how it misleads you. And that, the Gita says in the 18th chapter, that which gives you instant pleasure must necessarily give you sorrow in the end. So if you're operating on the mind, you go on picking instant pleasures and you design a life of sorrow for yourself. Then you can't get out of it. The intellect is that which has the capacity to opt for what we call as deferred gratification. It opts for what is painful in the beginning, knowing fully well that it will give you happiness in the end. To the extent that we are all successful, to that extent you have operated on the intellect. But there's a long way to go. So whether it is this instant pleasure, you make the wrong choices, you go the wrong way, whether it is in sense contact, in action. See, in sense contact, you believe that more is more. So we're all rushing out into the world to gain more from the world. The more you have, the less you enjoy. That's the truth. It's the intellect that points it out. Actions, selfish action, aggrandizing action. You lose, you're unsuccessful, unhappy. It's the intellect that points out the way, as Ramatirtha said, the way to gain anything is to lose it. Work in a spirit of giving and you will benefit immensely. Relationships. It is detachment. It's not hanging on, clinging. What love we profess to have is like a monkey's attachment. The monkey just hangs on to the infant. Even if the infant dies, it doesn't let go. Even when the infant gets worms eating the dead body, it doesn't let go. When the worms start eating the mother, then it lets go. It's monkey-like attachment we have in relationships, and the other person develops a disgust for you. Life, career, same thing. You go for instant pleasure and give up a life of fulfillment and happiness. So it functions across the world. Now, action is performed by the body. This action can be determined, driven either by the mind or the intellect. Whenever the mind drives you to action, it clouds the issue. You get totally confused, you get deluded, you don't know what to do, and you end up making mistakes. Like for instance, in Romeo and Juliet, which is a love story, they both fall in love with each other. And because they belong to warring families, they have to meet in secret. So one night when they met and they spent the night together, as dawn approached, Romeo heard the lark sing. The lark is a morning bird. And his intellect was clear. He knew what the lark sounded like, and he told Juliet, I can hear the lark. Dawn is approaching. I better get out of here, otherwise I'm dead. Juliet's intellect was still totally clouded. She did not want him to go. So she makes the famous statement, it is the nightingale and not the lark. Juliet knew what the nightingale sounded like and what the lark sounded like. She heard the lark, but because her mind did not want Romeo to go, she gets deluded, confused, and makes the statement, it's the nightingale. So in other words, she is trying to persuade him not to go. Luckily for us, he said, no, it's the lark, and walked out. Otherwise, the play would have ended right there. This happens to us. This happens to us in business decisions. This happens to us in almost 100% of the time when it comes to marriage. Because who do you marry? A person you love. You don't think, is this the right person for me? So you end up in a disaster. You don't say it, but it shows on your face. Whenever you use the intellect, it clears the air. Years and years of hatred, years and years of bitter quarreling, like East and West Germany. Suddenly, one person gets up and says, what are we doing? We're killing each other for nothing. United, we'll become a better, more powerful, more successful, prosperous country. So they rose above that hatred and functioned with the intellect. Today, there is a resurgent Germany. This is happening in our lives. Unnecessarily, we're fighting people without thinking. We only have to wake up and think. Together, we will be happier, we'll be more successful than fighting. And for that being together, there is a little give and take that all of us have to do. That's okay. But it's the mind that puts its foot down and says, no, and little issues. You go to cases which have gone up to High Court, Supreme Court, you get to the bottom of it, there's nothing there. There's no fight. There are only little issues. And it's the mind that is petty. It's the mind that picks on little things and fights and suffers. And therefore the Upanishads call the mind suicidal. Now let's take a look at what happens when you have varying degrees of mind and intellect. If you are a person who consults the intellect, scans all your desires and feelings with the intellect 100% of the time. In other words, 100% of your actions are guided by the intellect and 0% are directly prompted by the mind, then you are just a normal, sane person. How many such people are there in the world? If 25% of your actions are guided entirely by the mind and 75% intellect, what would you call such a person? Sentimental, emotional person. There's a person who you say something, why did you do this? And she breaks down, starts crying. That's a sentimental person. Yeah? So how can you talk to me like that? For no reason at all. That's a sentimental person. Then, if you're 50-50, no? Such a person is eccentric, moody, unpredictable. There are some people who have bosses like that. One day the boss will come in full of beans, happy, cheerful, and say, okay, let's order lunch for everyone, so on and so forth. Within 2 hours, he is in a terrible mood. He screams and shouts at everyone. Unpredictable, moody, eccentric, unreliable. If your discrimination falls to 25% and 75% of the time you just allow emotions to function, you call such a person hysterical, throws tantrums at the drop of a hat. You'll be surprised how many people fall in this category. And if 100% of your actions are driven entirely by the mind and the intellect doesn't come into play at all, that is insanity. So all of us are in varying degrees of insanity. Right from here till here, we have elements of insanity in us. You agree? So those are the areas where you get punched. Those are the areas where you're vulnerable. And through that, the enemy gets in. Who's the enemy? What is the enemy? Desire. In the 3rd chapter, he says, Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho. Kill this enemy, O Arjuna, mighty armed person. Kama Rupam, in the form of desire. Durasadam, very difficult to conquer. What a statement. So therefore, when there is a conflict between the mind and the intellect, which one should you follow? Intellect? You all agree? Which one do you follow? You said it. That's the problem. Yeah? Whether it is at a meal, where the mind says, I like the food, I want to eat one more puri, or in any conflict situation within you, you know you should follow the intellect. You know you are following the mind. Why are you following the mind and not the intellect? One of two reasons. Either the intellect is not available to you, whatever existing intellect is not available to you, or the intellect is not strong enough to control. It's like an alcoholic knows more than any one of us that he should not be drinking. He wakes up in the morning with a hangover and says, I'm going to give up this. By the time 6:30 in the evening comes, you all came here at 6:30. He goes elsewhere. Intellect, not strong enough. You know you should not get angry. But when you get angry, what happens? The intellect is not available at that time. The same intellect is available afterwards and tells you, Arey, you committed a great mistake by getting angry. Then why did you get angry then? Intellect was not available. So, therefore, what you need to do is, number one, consult your intellect at all times. Which means, all of us have some level of intellect. Bring that intellect into play at all times. That intellect should be available. And the second thing is, strengthen your intellect. Fortify your intellect. And this strengthening of the intellect is done by, how do you strengthen your body? Exercise. What must you do to strengthen your intellect? Same thing, exercise. Not physical exercise, intellectual exercise. Stretch the intellect. Think. Inquire. Question. Intellect, this thinking and inquiring is in great short supply today. Nobody thinks. Why are you wearing the clothes you are wearing? Everybody wears them, so I wear them. So therefore, you see the clothes, they go from parallels to baggy, then you're wearing meters and meters of clothes around you. Then suddenly it becomes tight, the jeans become so tight. Now, the girls are wearing such tight jeans, they can barely sit. And so it moves from tight to baggy. And you follow that without thinking. Great men and women made their own, determined what they should wear, how they should live life, what food they should eat, and the whole world followed them. This is called leaders. Only brainless people become followers. So why are you wearing tight jeans? If my neighbor wears, so I also wear. Why do you go and eat hamburgers? Because everybody says it's a cool thing to do, so I do it. No thinking. Why did you get married? My friends got married, so I also got married. There's no questioning. Therefore, now if I just ask you to question, think, you will say, what should I think about? Therefore, we have material. The entire Bhagavad Gita is a fantastic, simplified version of the Upanishadic truths, which are contrary to general perception, very easy to understand and much easier to implement. The entire Bhagavad Gita is available outside in the form of audio CDs, DVDs, so on and so forth. There are books, there are individual topics based on various Vedantic themes available. Pick up something, go home, listen to it, read it, and that will help you stretch your intellect and strengthen it, so that when you're up against the next challenge, this stronger intellect will help you to decide correctly, to choose correctly. Let's take a look at the overview of the chapter before we actually get on with the verses. Number 1, the first 2 verses are an introduction. It begins with Dhritarashtra asking a question to Sanjaya, who is the commentator of the entire Gita. The whole Gita comes to us through Sanjaya. Sanjaya literally means well controlled. The Gita can be understood and implemented, lived only by a person, or taught only by a person who has control over himself or herself. Dhritarashtra was sitting in Hastinapur, the capital, and the battle was being fought in Kurukshetra, about 120 kilometers away. Dhritarashtra wanted to know what his sons and the sons of Pandu were doing out there. And Sanjaya was gifted by Vyasa to see. Now you might say, how does he see 120 kilometers away? Live commentary, live telecast going on from Kurukshetra to Hastinapur. The second topic, Duryodhana starts speaking to Dronacharya, the Guru. And in these few verses, 3 to 11, Duryodhana displays his arrogance, his selfishness, his foolishness, and therefore his insecurity and fear. So on the one hand, he is arrogant. On the other hand, he is insecure. See, most of us are insecure and fearful. And where this fear and insecurity stem from is what we'll be seeing in this topic. The third one, when Bhishma sees the diffidence of Duryodhana. Duryodhana was the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava forces. Bhishma, who was their patriarch, grandfather, but who had given up the throne, so he had become the subject. And the subject, a soldier, has no right to decide whether the army should go to war or not. A soldier's duty is just to fight. Like in the charge of the Light Brigade, he says, theirs was not to question why, theirs was but to do and die. So Bhishma upheld that. Bhishma, therefore, knowing fully well that the Kauravas were unrighteous and that they were going to meet with a disastrous end because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas and that the Pandavas were right, still supported them, and he blew his conch to give him support, to encourage Duryodhana, because you can't have a commander-in-chief who's fearful and diffident. And once he blows his conch, everybody else blows, so they're battle ready. The battle is about to begin. Arjuna, the next topic, fourth topic, verses 20 to 25, is ready and asks Krishna, his charioteer, to drive him between the two armies so that he may see those who have assembled in the enemy forces to please Duryodhana. Now Krishna wants to teach Arjuna a lesson. He says, not everyone out there, he's being judgmental. Not everyone out there is out to please Duryodhana. There are people like stalwarts like Bhishma and Drona who are there just to do their duty. So Krishna drives his chariot right in front of Bhishma and Drona in the hope that Arjuna would also get inspired to do his duty. But it has a completely different effect. So the next topic, Arjuna succumbs to emotion. He sees his own beloved grandfather. He doesn't see an opposing soldier. He sees Dronacharya, his guru, who taught him how to shoot arrows, not physics or chemistry. He sees relatives, he sees brothers-in-law, he sees grandfathers, he actually mentions that. And he completely forgets the purpose of this battle, which was to establish righteousness. It was not to kill his relatives. It was to make sure that righteousness prevailed. And he breaks down. Gandiva, his famous bow, he lays down. And then he starts blabbering. This is what happens to us. A person with clear thinking speaks only when it is necessary and when the other person is ready to hear. A confused person gives out his confusion and he really doesn't bother whether the other person is ready to hear him or not. And you see this. He reasons wrongly and he tells Krishna, I have no desire for victory, no desire for the kingdom, and I certainly don't want the pleasures of the world or heaven. But he completely forgets that that is not the purpose of the war. The purpose of the war was to establish righteousness. And then the last topic, Arjuna collapses completely. Throughout, Krishna does not speak. Throughout the first chapter, Krishna doesn't speak. Then you might say, why am I wasting my time? There are valuable insights. And throughout these verses, you see yourself being enacted in and through these verses. You see the devastation that takes place when the mind overtakes the intellect. You see the wrong reasoning that you go through. You see your intellect, whatever little intellect you have, completely held hostage by the mind. Where the mind doesn't allow the intellect to think beyond what you desire. And you learn. And today and the next 4 days, we have this wonderful opportunity to learn from Arjuna's dilemma. And that's what the first chapter is titled. So we begin, verse 1.